Hello and welcome to Phoenixville Public Library, those of you in our community room and those of you on Zoom, to our program in our Community Gardening Around the Village series on houseplants. And we are pleased to have with us tonight a master gardener who was actually here with us back in 2017 when she did a container gardening workshop for us. Cassandra Hogue, who has been volunteering as a master gardener for Penn State Extension for 9 years now. She's a retired chemist, a longtime resident of Chester County, and she enjoys gardening in a very shady woodland garden near Exton. Welcome back, Cassandra, and those of you listening on Zoom, feel free to chime in anytime with questions. Either unmute yourself or type in the chat, and if you type in the chat, I will relay them to our presenter. And those in the room, of course, can ask questions anytime. Right. Without further ado, Cassandra, take it away.
So, hi everybody. Thank you so much. Don't applaud till I answer a few questions. I couldn't already answer this woman's question on her family spider plant. So, yeah, as Mark said, I'm a master gardener with Chester County, and the master gardeners are part of the Penn State Extension. Every county in Pennsylvania has a master gardener program, and the mission of Master Gardeners is to disseminate science-based information to the public. So that is our mission. All right, wrong way. All right, welcome. Yes. So houseplants are having a moment. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. And what we're going to talk about, a very brief history of houseplants. How did the houseplants that we grow get to our houses, And we'll talk about what are the best houseplants, basically right plant, right place, some common problems, and your questions and comments. And feel free to chime in with questions as I go along, because sometimes you can't remember, you lose your train of thought on the flow. So that's briefly the agenda for tonight. And as Mark already gave you my background. This is a photo I took at Wegmans. So houseplants are really having a moment. That was at the lobby of the Wegmans in Exton. So everybody's getting ready for houseplant season here. So here are some of the most popular houseplants. So let me just ask before we talk about some of these, which you probably have all know and love and seen, because these are really like the indoor-outdoor carpeting of houseplants. How many people do you already have houseplants? Oh yeah, great. And what do you grow? What do you have? What are your favorite houseplants?
I have the peace lily.
Okay.
But I lost it.
Cactuses.
More jet.
Okay, cactuses, that's always
And
good.
succulents.
Okay.
And then some, what are they called? The ones that would be down on the islands. Whatever, tropical plants.
Sure, tropical plants.
And African violets.
Oh, and we have African violets, African violets,
Yeah.
they're making a comeback.
Yeah.
They're making a comeback. My aunt, when I was growing up, had African violets. They sort of went out of style for a while, but.
I have a money plant that just keeps having babies.
Oh, I have one of those.
That's great, that's great.
Yeah, that's neat.
Right. So one of the things, if we look at these are the four most popular houseplants. If we look at these, what do we notice about them? They all really are sort of from the tropics. I mean, not the hot tropics, but they're from tropical regions. All of these plants are from the tropics. And why? So why are these plants so popular? Because they have, most importantly, they do not have a dormancy period. Mediterranean plants, although Mediterranean plants are beautiful and we love Mediterranean plants, they go dormant. They do go dormant in the winter, even though we think of the Mediterranean as being warm and sunny all the time. It's not. So the plants go dormant. So these plants always are looking good. They have attractive foliage. They're frequently very architectural. This is the Schefflera, of course, another very popular.
What's it called?
Schefflera.
I have one. I didn't know
Yeah,
what it's called.
yeah, they're very popular. They're very, very popular. They're easy to grow. They tolerate various conditions.
I had one that my daughter gave me and I killed it. So I got another one, she doesn't know yet. But it kind of, I don't know if I was overwatering or underwatering. Like it kind of like, the leaves all turned brown and it withered up basically. But it wasn't in direct sunlight either. and I was watering a little bit once a week.
It's hard to say right off, because it depends on a number of things. It depends on how big the pot is.
Is it too big possibly?
That's not the problem. But the
Okay.
bigger the pot, the less you need to water, because
Okay.
the water, the plant, the soil will retain the water
Okay.
and the moisture,
Okay.
kind of a thing. You know, based if you said the leaves all shriveled up, it sounds like it might have been underwater. That's just a guess.
Yeah.
That's just a guess.
That's what I was
Yeah.
assuming, but.
Yeah.
Oh.
So the way to test that, the best way to test is it underwatered or are you watering enough, is basically the finger test. Put your finger in the top inch of the soil. If
Mhm.
it's dry all the way down to, more than an inch, then it most likely could use some water,
Mhm.
unless it's a cactus or a plant that really
Right,
doesn't like a
right,
lot
right.
of water.
Okay.
So these are, like I said, most of these plants came from tropical rainforest, and they will actually tolerate low light, because in a tropical rainforest, there's a big canopy, there's big trees, there's bigger plants and all this kind of stuff. So they will tolerate low light, they will tolerate poor soil, they don't need to be coddled and fertilized and everything else like that, which makes them, a very easy to grow houseplant, or a plant that you don't have to really fuss over it too much. And they can be really long-lived, generational plants. I have a Dracaena. I have 2 Dracaenas, and these Dracaenas were my mother's. They were my mother's plants. So, my mother has been gone for 35 years, so those plants have to be, 40 years old, and they look great. So, they can live a long time, which is, another reason why these plants are so popular. So, how did we get to these house plants? So where did they come from? So most of them came from tropics. So where did they really come from? Well, of course, they came from the English, who were the great colonizers, So during the, 17th to 19th centuries, the English were out ready, fighting with the Spanish Armada and exploring the New World and all these kinds of things, like, the colonization period, basically. And they were searching for lucrative new cash crops, but they would take scientists along, because scientists were interested in, new crops and new plants and these kinds of things. So the scientists would always bring plants back to study, and the wealthy wanted these plants as, of course, a status symbol. So unfortunately, most plants didn't survive the long ocean journeys. These things take months, until Nathaniel Ward designed a wooden container called the Wardian case. And there's a photo of the Wardian case, courtesy of the Arnold Arboretum. And that allowed these scientists to go on these expeditions and plant hunting expeditions, and they brought back lots and lots of plants, which, the English then simultaneously started building conservatories, glass houses, so you have, Kew Gardens is one of the early examples of a glass conservatory, so they could grow these plants through the winter and display these plants. But that's really the history of how do we get houseplants, is they came from the explorers, and, the wealthy wanted them as a status symbol. All right, what happened here? There we go. So then, in the 19th and the 20th century, we have, the next phase of houseplants. And 19th century Victorian women were very interested in houseplants. At that time, women could study botany. That was an acceptable scientific adventure for women. They could study botany. They couldn't study medicine or any of these other kinds of things, but botany was okay. So you actually have a lot of women who were very prominent in publications in the 19th and 20th century. And the other sociological trend that was happening was that, you have the rise of urbanization. People are leaving farms where they have, where they're growing farming and they have a kitchen garden or something like that. They're moving to urban centers, and there's not the space to have a large garden. So people wanted houseplants because they like to have gardens. So there's a desire among the middle class also to have plants. And by this time, plants were getting less just for the wealthy. Plants were being propagated and that kind of thing. But by the early 1900s, houseplants were considered sort of old-fashioned and outdated, and minimal aesthetics sort of took over, favoring, a single plant. Because the Victorians, of course, would load their houses with, millions of ferns and orchids and all kinds of things. And this sort of clustered look was not, sort of got out of favor as time went by, as everything does. So, but now, houseplants have made a big comeback because people who garden like to have houseplants. It's nice to have something green in your house all year round, and a lot of them will bloom. If you get the right kind of plant. But you don't need to. The nice thing about a lot of houseplants is you don't need to have a bloom to enjoy the plant. The plant is beautiful on its own, and for its own structural or architectural kind of features, or foliage, or those kinds of things. So, what are the best plants? Well, there's no answer to that because it's the right plant in the right place. That's the best plant. I put up 3 examples here of perhaps some plants that you may or may not be familiar with, but these are very good plants for very low light conditions. And, plenty of people have low light conditions. Plus, we're heading into the winter months where the light is going to be, disappearing. So what was your sunny window in June is not going to be your sunny window in December. It's going to have light, but it's probably we don't have a lot of sunny days from December through February. So these are plants that are particularly good, particularly good for very low light conditions. So if you've got a darker den or a cubicle at your office or something like that, and these are, a little bit less common, these plants are a little bit less common. So, and they're, they can get tall, but they can also stay small. You can, and plus, the nice thing about these things is these plants are particularly needy in terms of attention. They'll tolerate dry conditions, they'll tolerate neglect and infrequent watering. I mean, that's particularly good if you have your plant at the office kind of thing, because if you forget to water it for a week or two, it'll be okay, kind of thing. The plant on the far right is the common name for this is ZZ plant, Zimicula zemifolia. This plant is toxic to pets and people due to oxalic acid in its leaves. Oxalic acid is the stuff that's actually in the cut stems of daffodils. It's sticky and it's very irritating. But I made a point of that because when you're buying house plants, you should always check to see what the toxicity is. A lot of houseplants are toxic to pets or young children. Now, children you may or may not have children chewing on your houseplants, but they may be toxic to pets. And some, so always check when you buy a plant. You can look it up easily on the internet, the toxicity, and there are a lot of plants that are toxic. So always double check if you have a pet before you bring your plant home, or before you, cats are notorious for trying things out, and they can make them, some plants can make them extremely sick or very, a lot of discomfort. Because oxalic acid would actually, really burn the cat's tongues because it's extremely astringent. So you want to check about that. So, okay, here we go. So, some other choices. We talked about some of the tropicals, but there's other choices as well. There's flowering plants like geraniums. So geraniums you can actually grow indoors. So this is your regular geranium that you have outside. It's called a zonal geranium, and let's see. There we go. There, not just in red. So the one on the far left is pink. That's just your regular garden variety geranium that a lot of people grow in the spring and the summer. They're great plants because they rebloom all summer, and you can bring them inside. And they will bloom in the winter, but they do need a lot of direct sun. Not everybody has the right conditions to get them to grow. I have a master gardener friend who, she's got quite a collection of geraniums, and I've been to her house in the winter, and it's just amazing. You know, she has a shelf in her sunniest window, and she's got her geraniums across there, and they actually will bloom. They do need fertilization, I think. Yeah, did I say this? Yes, they need regular fertilizing, so you've gotta keep up with it. Most houseplants don't need to be fertilized regularly. You need to fertilize them probably once a year in the spring when they start growing again, and when they're getting ready to put on a growth spell. But most houseplants don't need a lot of fertilization. Geraniums do. Any plant that's going to bloom needs fertilization and needs water. So they need regular fertilizing. They also need good drainage in the pot. So if you have these geraniums outside, which many people do, they might have them in a hanging basket. They might have them planted in a bed or as a perimeter. Put them in a pot, but make sure the pot has adequate holes on the bottom so the water drains out. So that's the one. The other problem with houseplants is getting the roots waterlogged. We overwater things, and then they can't. The water can't go anywhere because it's not like a plant that's outside in the soil outside. So regal geraniums are another form of geranium. They're often in forest. Come on.
Pushing down.
I'm pushing down. Huh. All right, we can do it this way. Let's see. We can do there. These are regal geraniums in the center, and you may or may not be too familiar with them. They're generally, as I said, in forest. They're also toxic to dogs and cats, so gotta be careful of that as well. But they're more tolerant of shadier conditions, or less light in your house than the zonal geranium. And then the one on the far right is the citronella, scented geranium. They're generally grown more for their scent than their bloom, although that picture has a beautiful bloom on it. But it has that very typical geranium fragrance. The geraniums have very unique fragrance, and they're obviously they're not just in red. So it's something to consider. You could try that or something different if you have enough light. This is always the problem with blooming things. Blooming things need sun or light.
Oh, you're hitting the.
Oh, I'm hitting the
pointer.
There we go. Oh no.
What was that?
Oh dear. Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you end the presentation?
Oh, I didn't mean to.
Oh,
There we go.
go.
All right,
Okay.
we're back.
Can I ask a question about the citronella?
Yes.
Yeah, when you're done, Mr.
Go
Warren.
ahead.
Oh, can you bring that inside?
Yes.
Alright, because I just have like the basic pots that I got from the store.
Are they plastic pots?
Yeah.
So the better thing than the plastic pot is to put it in. The best thing for plants is a clay pot.
Yeah.
If you have a small clay pot, that's much better because it allows the water to dissipate through the pores of it. Clay is very porous, so the water won't just fall to the bottom. Plastic doesn't breathe.
No, right.
So if you've got a clay pot, and put it in the clay pot,
Okay.
it'll moderate the water content and allow the
Okay.
exchange of water. So I would definitely do that. Some other choices, somebody said that they grew cactus, you said you grew cactus. So cactus and succulents are also good choices for the winter. They will thrive in the warmth, which is good because we're going into the season where we're going to have very warm houses, and not all plants like warmth and dry. The bigger problem in the winter is the lack of humidity in houses. So they will certainly tolerate that, and they like bright indirect light, which is also good for houses in the Northeast here. They don't need to be in the full sun. They will, they prefer that, but they'll tolerate bright and indirect indirect light. Cactus and succulents, so cactuses are in the general family of succulents. So cactus are a part of the succulent family, but succulents are separate from cactuses. So succulents is the broader class of plants. And you can plant, and succulents generally do need more water than cactus. So you can plant them together if you don't overwater the cactus, you know. And you can look to see, there's so many varieties of succulents out now. It's just staggering, and also little cactuses. So, you know, when you're at the store, look at the cultivar. Look at the cultivar name. The cultivar name is going to be the name in Latin, you know, below the common name. And you can look to see how much watering it requires. If it requires a lot of water, it may not be the best choice to put with cactus, but if you can find one that doesn't require too much water, you can plant them together. Let's see.
Question over here.
Something with the succulents too. It's fun once in a while when you don't realize they bloom, and you wake up one morning and there's a little shoot on a flower or something. That's really cool, actually.
Yeah,
I enjoy that.
Yeah.
It's nice.
And they're very tolerant, you know, and then they're so popular because, you know, for the same reasons all we like houseplants is they're very tolerant of all kinds of sort of benign neglect kind of thing, you know. Oh no, I'm pressing the down button.
Only hit the down button, don't hit anything else with it.
I'm trying, that's what I was doing.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. All right, so here. So this cactus garden, these are my plants. So on the left, so, you know, I have a little cactus garden here, and you can see on the far left of that pot, there is a succulent. And there's a big cactus, and there's other cactuses, and there's a bunch of different kind of things, and they've managed to happily coexist. I don't, you know, I put them far enough, and I'm sure you guys all know this little trick with watering succulents and cactus. You can use just an ice cube, you know. So instead of using water, just take an ice cube and put an ice cube at the base of the plant, and it will melt slowly and not drown the soil. And that kind. And then if you have a pot like that, you can put the ice cube where the succulent needs it and stay away from the cactus. On the far right are Schlumbergia. The one on the left is the Thanksgiving cactus, and the one on the right is a Christmas cactus. These are, again, very long-lived plants. This plant on the right was my mother's, again. This is my mother's plant. This plant's got to be, 40 or 50 years old. And, these are I think they're really nice house plants. I think is a different form than tropicals. Yeah, tropicals are nice, but they're generally broad-leafed. They're generally dark green and this kind of. This is spidery and so it's a different kind of a texture and a different kind of a look. I had very good success with getting these things to bloom without too much problem at all. And I do not do the put it in the dark for 12 hours and bring it out for 12 hours. I do not do that. Nobody has time to do that. Nobody remembers to do that every day. So I leave mine out, and I'm going to bring them in the next couple days or so. I leave them outside in the summer, and then I bring them in when it starts to get cool. The thing with house plants, if you put them outside, which house plants love to be outside in the summer, if you don't put a very sensitive plant in the direct sun, but they like to come in before it gets tremendously cold, because they don't like this big switch of environment. So they're outside, and let's say the temperature is dropping to 50 at night, and the daytime temperature is 70. So then you bring it into your house, and now all of a sudden it's constantly 72 degrees. That's a big switch for this plant. So they like to be, so bring them in a little bit before it gets too chilly, so they can get, so they feel like they're getting acclimated to their new environment, where it's 70 degrees all the time, kind of a thing. But these plants do need to be, I found, need to be fertilized in order to bloom. Mine will not bloom. I've tried this a couple different ways, and I have not had success not fertilizing them. I start to fertilize the Christmas cactus particularly, like about October, with just with some kind of bloom booster, the usual Miracle Grow bloom booster plant. So I fertilize it with that, and then in about a month or so, it will start to, or more, slightly more than that, it will start to put out blooms. They bloom based on the length of the day. So as the days get shorter, they're going to be more prone to bloom. So you can don't, if it doesn't bloom the first year, give it a shot the second year. But they're not. I've never had a hard time getting them to rebloom, and as I said, I don't really do anything very special aside from fertilize them with some bloom booster.
And how often do you do that?
I I only do that probably twice in the fall. In the fall. It takes fertilizer a little while for it to get incorporated. So the other thing you have to think about is with your houseplants, and I'm guilty of this as well, is that, potting soil comes impregnated with all kinds of fertilizer and nutrients. Potting soil is not soil. We know it's a non-soil mix of inert ingredients. So it's not giving the plant any nutrients that it would be getting if it were living outside in the real soil. So you've got to fertilize houseplants, and you also should really, once every 2 years or so, pull it out of that pot and give it some fresh potting soil, because the potting soil is, as I said, is definitely impregnated with fertilizer and these kinds of things. So it gives it'll feed it. Plants need to be fed. If you don't do that, I probably haven't transplanted that plant in, I don't know when, 3 or 4 years. At least fertilize it. Fertilize it with blooming plants. The Miracle Grow is called Bloom Booster, because fertilizers are formulated for different things. The general fertilizer is a 10-10-10 mix of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, which is generally the macronutrients that plants need. To bloom, plants need phosphorus. So they need, potassium. So you gotta give it Bloom Booster, which is formulated to have more of that. So if you want your Christmas cactus to bloom and your Thanksgiving cactus to bloom, give them a little dose of that. Let's see, what else? Okay, so now we're going to go to problems with houseplants, and I'm willing to entertain questions if you have problems with your houseplants. The number one problem with houseplants is overwatering, and I'm guilty of that like everybody else. So, because it's so easy, you think, okay, it's like you're sort of attuned to watering your plants outdoors, but watering a container plant is very different, because it's not getting as much sun, it's not getting the airflow, it's not getting wind. Wind dries things out, and it's a very small container, so it's going to retain the water. So make sure you don't overwater. And so number one, ensure your container has drainage holes. Don't plant it in, there's a lot of very attractive containers out there, but if they don't have a drainage hole, put a pot inside it that does have a drainage hole. Mm-hmm. And also, don't put the container directly on the floor, because if it has a drainage hole and you put it directly on the surface, it's not going to drain. It's not going to drain. It's going to be flush against the surface, and the water's going to have nowhere to go. You can buy these very inexpensive little plastic saucers which is good to put your plant on anyhow, and they have little ridges, and that will keep the pot. They're getting flimsier and flimsier, like everything is. I know they're so damn darn flimsy anymore, and they've got so little ridges. You can go to a garden store or craft stores and buy inexpensive pebbles, and put a layer of pebbles down, and that will get the plant off the flush surface, so it will not just be right there. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I have a problem with my spider plants. I don't know if I overwater or what.
Oh, no.
I know somebody else mentioned
Yes.
spider, but I missed that part, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just don't know, I had problems killing them so easily. I don't know why. And one was my niece's, I'm like,
So my first guess
Yeah.
is because the number one problem is generally overwatering. That would be my first guess.
yeah,
So it's in a container that has a drainage hole?
yes.
Okay.
So what would you suggest as an amount, like, the size of the plant I have now is a little bigger, it's, not like gigantic by any means.
Right.
And I have it in a clay pot with the
Okay,
drainage.
okay, good.
And so far it's doing good, knock on wood, but the one I had before I killed, so I don't know.
So here's my test. I can't
Bigger again?
Yeah. Put your
Okay.
finger in it, because depending on how warm your house is, how much sun it's going to get, how fast the plant is growing.
How much should a sprayer have, a sun?
I think they're pretty tolerant of fairly
Anything?
low light. I used to have one, I don't remember. I think they're tolerant of low light. I don't think
Low
they
light.
need a lot, I don't think
Okay.
they need a lot of sun. They don't
Okay.
need a lot of light.
All right.
But all those things influence how fast it's growing. But check the soil.
Yeah.
That's the number one best thing to do because,
Yep,
yep.
okay.
So
Okay.
when you check the soil, you don't wanna water it unless your finger, tell me again?
So you put your finger in the soil all the way down to the first knuckle. And
Right.
if it's dry all the way down to the first knuckle, you can probably water it.
All the way down
If
to the
it's
first
damp, if it's damp like a sponge,
Yeah, that's
you
what
probably
it's
don't
not.
need to water it. But all of that is a very generalized rule.
Yeah.
Because some plants, it's like everything. There's not 100% rule on these kinds of things. Some plants like to be kept consistently moist. They like the soil to be consistently moist, not wet, but some plants like to completely dry out between waterings.
Right.
So you have to really know, just look up what the plant likes, what conditions it likes. So the most common problems are three with houseplants. Spider mites are extremely, extremely common. I mean, everybody's who's grown houseplants have had spider mites. They cause discolored leaves, mottled appearance, and this like fine white webbing between the leaves and the stem. So when you first look at your plant, you might think, oh, it's like dusty, it's dusty or dirty, but it's white. And, if you ignore it, it'll just get worse because these things will really grow. These problems tend to come up more in the winter because a lot of these things are like dry conditions, these kinds of things with plants. If you have, spider mites are very, they're a little bit hard to get rid of, and they can also jump from plant to plant. They're little mites, they're little tiny insects. So you want to make sure you get that plant away from your other plants if you have house plants in like a row of house plants kind of thing. And you can wash the plant with insecticidal soap, neem oil, or alcohol, just a little bit of that. Just wash the leaves, and that'll wipe all of that out, wipe all of that. But you got to go back and make sure that you got it because these things can be pretty persistent, But they're highly common. And then to prevent their recurrence is try to increase the humidity around the plant. Sometimes easier said than done in a warm house in the winter. All right, the next problem are mealybugs. Also, very, very common problem. You get, the sticky honey, the leaves will be sticky, and you can see black sooty mold on the plant. These insects excrete, their excretion is extremely sweet, so then it's a sugar base, so it's going to grow mold. It'll get black and grow mold. Now that's an extreme case. I've had mealybugs, everybody's had these problems. You get these white cottony egg masses and sticky leaves. If you touch the leaves and they're sticky, there's something wrong. And this can be introduced from new plants. I mean, this is not, you buy a plant at a nursery or anything like that and you think it's all fine, but they have their problems too, particularly the hothouse plants and that kind of stuff in the spring. So it can be introduced from other plants, and it's also due to being overwatered or over-fertilized. So that's part of the root cause of those problems.
Where do they come from?
They basically live in the soil.
Oh, okay.
They basically live in the soil. Most of these this is where most of these things live. So same kind of thing as with the, with other plants. You can wash it with insecticidal soap. You can buy insecticidal soap, at Lowe's or anywhere else like that, or just alcohol or neem oil. People like neem oil. It will basically suffocate the insects, kind of stuff, and be harmless to the plants. And then same kind of thing, treat the plant and then keep an eye on it. Don't walk away and assume that it's all done, because we might need more than one treatment of this stuff. And then, oops, wait, wrong way, sorry. Fungus, oh, yeah, this is right. Fungus gnats. This is also another very common problem. They're small, dark little gnats, and and they're visible, especially after watering. The larvae definitely lives in the soil. So unlike the two other pests that we talked about, which live on the leaves where you can wipe it off with insecticidal soap or alcohol or those kinds of things, you have to get rid of the larvae. So you gotta get the soil drained out. So you gotta reduce the watering, allow it to completely dry out, make sure you have adequate drainage in your pot, and you can use BT, which is a very common thing anymore. BT is a Bacillus thuringiensis. It kills the larvae of the fungus gnats. I've had fungus gnats in one of my containers, and they don't kill the plant, but they're really annoying. They're really annoying. You got these little gnats every time you water. It's like really. So they're not attractive. It's not an attractive kind of a thing. But they're fairly easy to kill if you can kill the larvae in the soil kind of thing, and let the soil completely dry out, and hopefully your plant will survive. I did have a plant that did die from I just could not get the mealy bugs under control. I mean, they can get out of control pretty fast, and depending on the type of plant, I had a type of palm that it was multi-branched, and it had a central stem that all these things were just hiding in. So these things can get out of control. So sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and ditch the plant, because you can't get rid of it. You don't want it to infect your other plants and get everything all infected. So that's all I have. I finished early, so questions, comments?
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about peace lilies? Because we have one where it's kind of turning brown. It's getting some direct, but more so indirect light. And it just seems strange that it's not.
Yeah, because I think those things generally favor indirect light. I mean, I think it sounds like it should be in the right light conditions. Have you fertilized it lately?
No.
How long have you had the plant?
A year.
So it could use some fertilizer.
It was a gift, and when I tried to poke around in there, I don't know if there's styrofoam inside. It didn't seem like potting soil. I don't know what it is in there. It didn't seem like a normal plant. It seemed like something else.
Yeah, it could have been potted up, or so that because when people give things as gifts, they don't want the soil spilling on all that. Yeah. So what I would do with that is take the plant out to your back deck, dump the stuff out of there, dump all whatever it's planted in, and shake off the potting media, and look at the roots of the plant. Look at the roots of the plant. If the roots should look white and healthy. If they look dead, I mean, you can look at it. You can figure out how well the and if the roots look a little compromised, get out your scissors and trim off all the dead roots. Trim it back. That's really the best thing to do. If the plant's strong, it'll grow more roots. And then put it in, fresh. Clean the pot, and also before you put it back in the pot, clean the pot. Clean it with hot water. I mean, technically you should clean it with bleach and all that kind of stuff, but we don't have to go overboard. Clean it with soap and water. If there's perhaps a disease or a pathogen lingering, clean the pot with soap and water, let it dry out, and then repot it with fresh potting soil, and don't overwater it.
And could direct light be hurting it after in sunlight?
I don't, off the top of my head, I thought they were pretty tolerant of that, but I have to look it up. I don't know right off the top of my head. It could be. Some plants are sensitive to direct light, and they will fry in the, is it in, behind a window? Is it in a window? Yeah, so the window can also increase the intensity, magnify the intensity of that. I'll look that up. How much light does it need and what sunlight fry it? But if you had it for a year and you haven't repotted it and it came as a gift and it might be potted with who knows what, it won't hurt to repot it. Give it a fresh home and a little bit of and potting mix, like I said, potting mix now, practically all potting mix comes with built-in fertilizer. So you don't have to fertilize it if you put fresh potting mix in there.
You know, I have a question about when you say some plants can be outside for the summer and then you bring them in the fall.
Right.
I've always been afraid to do that because I think bugs or worms or something is going to come in, so I never bring things inside after.
I do it all the time. But but I used to be a more diligent gardener than I am. But what I used to do was, and this is actually best practice, is get out your hose or your watering can and drench the plant. That will knock off any kind of little parasites and bugs and that kind of stuff. Worms are not going to be growing in your, are not going to be living in your pot, I don't think. Or did you have one living in your pot?
Once I had an orchid, and this black snail thing kind of crawled out of my orchid pot. This happened 20 years ago, and I'll never forget.
Oh, that's right.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So, if you leave your plants, that's what I do, is I used to, or your garden hose, hose them all off and that kind of stuff, and then bring them in, I mean, that, they would like that anyway, but, I haven't done that, but, I should. So I haven't, but.
We have a question from someone on Zoom.
Yes.
How much light do snake plants need?
Snake plants are incredibly tolerant. They will tolerate a very wide range of conditions, and they will actually tolerate very low light conditions. So you can put them in a corner and they'll be okay. You can put them in a dark corner and they'll be okay. Sansevieria is the botanical name for those things. And they're quite architectural. They're nice plants.
Yeah.
I had one and I killed it.
Yeah. My mom had some that was her nuts. I gotta go back to that one plant in the very beginning that I said my daughter gave me and I killed it.
The spider plant,
No, there's something Cerna,
okay?
for Cerna. I just want the spelling.
Dracaena.
Spell it for me, please.
D-R-A-C-E-N-A.
Wait, I'm sorry, C.
D-R-A-C-E-N-A.
C-E-N-A, thank you. Is that me? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all
I
right.
thought I turned it off. Thank you, that's all I had on that.
It's all right.
Sorry, I didn't know
I
that
can
was
find
there.
it. Oops, screen sharing has stopped because the external just. I'm
You
just
stopped it,
useless
yeah.
with this. I'm sorry.
The program ended, yeah.
The program.
The PowerPoint closed.
Oh, my fault. I'm sorry, Mark. I'm just useless with this.
Now I gotta-
You need to bring something up on it again?
No, I was
They
gonna
don't
show
have
her
anything else to
Dracaena,
do.
but that's okay.
That's all right.
That's
It's
okay.
fine.
Okay. Any other questions from
Other
anyone on
questions,
Zoom right now?
Comments?
Mark, I have one question. Can I ask?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I had a plant like which I kept outside during the summer, and when during winter I try to fall, I bring it inside. Then I see the plant is going to die. Like I don't know, they don't survive. I felt like that after bringing them in.
It depends on what the plant is, so it really depends on what the plant is. So if you have, let's just say, the general broad class of, let's say, ornamental plants, like, I've got begonias on my back deck, I have begonias, I have coleus, I have, there's petunias, you can have a number of things that will look terrific during the summer, but they will not survive in your house. Some begonias will, but generally the floral begonias that they sell in the garden centers that bloom so beautifully in your pots are not going to survive in your house because they're annuals. They're annuals. They have a 1-year life. So it depends on the plant.
Even the Darsina, that magenta, the plant you showed at the beginning, if I put that, it's good in my house, like when I keep it in my house near the window, it grows very well. And summer, like I felt like, I should put it out, like sometime it will grow much better, I thought like that. But when I bring it inside, the leaves start turning brown and all, as if it's getting dried up and all like that, it was happening. So it took time to survive back at home, like later on.
Yeah, they, like I was saying, you can't wait too long to bring them in because it's a big change of environment, for these plants. And they don't like, like everybody likes this big shock of, coming from outside because they get acclimated to perhaps being a little cooler, and then you bring them into your house and it's 75 degrees or whatever it is at your house, and it's dry. That's the other thing is, most houses are very dry because of our heating systems. Outside it's humid, so the conditions are very different. So they're going to go through a period of maybe not being too happy. So my recommendation is, know what kind of plants you have, know how much light it likes, find a place where it's going to get the adequate amount of light, and bring it in. Now's probably about the best time to start bringing your plants in. I was just thinking about this the other day. We're going to have a little bit of a warm spell, but then it's going to get cooler. So I would start thinking about bringing your plants in if they're really house plants. Foliage plants like I was talking about, like begonias, petunias, coleus, calabrotia, all these kinds of things. Cut them back. You enjoyed them. Their time on earth is done.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
How about a hibiscus plant? I have it in a big pot, and I carried it out because I had it inside. So I think it's a hibiscus.
It sounds right.
Yeah,
right,
is that okay to bring in as well?
You can try that.
But is it best just to leave it outside? Because I want it to come back next year. That's
Well,
the thing.
you can't leave it outside.
Right.
Hibiscus there are hardy hibiscus.
Yeah.
There are hardy hibiscus, and they'll come back year after year. But it's a little tricky with containers because a plant in the container is going to be subject to much colder and windier temperatures than a plant in the ground. Hardy hibiscus, if you plant in the ground, you can cut back and they should come back. If it's in a container, you can put it, you can try putting it in your garage.
Okay.
Because hardy hibiscus will go dormant anyhow.
Okay.
So you're not going to enjoy it. It's not going to be a nice plant for you.
But I had it in the house.
But there's tropical hibiscus. If it's a tropical hibiscus.
Yeah, I think it is, because I bought it last year and it looked really good, and then when I brought it outside, it almost died. Because I think it was actually too early, but there was still frost once in a while. So then I covered it up with a bag instead of keep bringing it in and out.
Right.
And then it finally got all its leaves back.
Yeah, it
So
sounds
if it's
like
tropical, it'd be okay
If it's
then.
tropical, you can bring it in.
Okay,
And
cool.
it might, I don't know that much about hibiscus because, they're generally not used as a house plant, but they could be.
Yeah.
There's no reason why you can't.
Yeah, okay.
For sure.
Cool.
Sure.
Thank you.
We could bring ours.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything else from the folks on Zoom?
This lady in the front row, yes.
I have Schiflera. It's supposed to be variegated, but it's in bright indirect light, so I know it's not getting enough light to bring out the variegation. But I took a leaf to Gardeners on
Yep, on 113, yeah, that's a great place,
And I
isn't
took a
it?
leaf in because it had these kind of dry brown spots, and he said it was scale.
Scale,
So
right.
I got some spray, but I have to scrape, I've used toothbrush. Every leaf has to be scraped off, and then, inundated top and bottom of the
Right.
leaves to prevent it from coming back.
Right.
And I've never had that before. Fortunately, it's by itself in my bedroom. So, none of the other plants downstairs will get it. But it's am I right in thinking that it's not getting enough light to be variegated?
Probably, yeah, because usually variegation and, different leaf patterns come with with light, so you're probably right.
Yeah, it's in a window, it gets the bright light at the end of the day, but that's about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, plants generally, blooming plants and plants like that generally like morning sun. The morning sun from like 10 to 2 is sort of like the
Okay.
golden hour for
Yeah, well,
light for
it's-
plants. Once the sun gets
Yeah.
down, it's a lower angle and it's
Right.
not nearly as
Yeah,
much,
it's
not
getting
nearly
like
as much photons.
2 to
Kind of.
4, a couple of late afternoon hours.
Yeah, might not be enough to get it there. But they're still nice plants.
Oh, yeah.
They're still very nice
It's
plants.
doing really well, and it came, I've had it, I'm not sure, at least 5 years. And it came in a pot with 3 stems. So, and it's growing, it's probably about this tall now.
Nice.
But I just haven't had the time to take a toothbrush and scrape off
Yeah,
all the leaves.
yeah. When houseplants get things, it's generally a tedious
Yeah,
kind of a treatment.
but he said spray the top and the bottom of the leaves.
Yeah,
And just
both
leave
sides.
that on,
Yeah, right,
Okay.
right.
so it doesn't come back. Now, could that be in the soil? Where does scale come from? Because it's not a bug.
No, it's not. I'm not sure if it's bacterial or viral. I
Oh.
don't know. It could be an airborne, or it could be an airborne fungus. It's one of those.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't give you a good answer. It's one of those.
Yeah, well, like I said, I've had it for a long time, and it's been in this place for 3 years. So it probably started with the scale before I even moved, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty much all over mostly, except the upper newer leaves. So I'm hoping that
Yeah, I
they
hope you
don't
can
get
save
it.
it. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it seems healthy otherwise.
Right.
And they do get sticky too, some of the leaves. And he said that was the result of the scale.
Yeah. Okay, other
And
questions?
Any last questions?
Last questions.
Thank you.
Going once, going twice. Okay.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For coming. Oh, thank you.